I would like to move on to the next session, which is our much expected workshop. And so I hope that everyone has read the sample essays. And for now, I think we're gonna do a small survey about the demographic, right? So our technical people are gonna show up a poll on the demographic of people here before. Okay, so the question here is how many what percentage of people in the sessions here are parent, student, counselor, and other?
It says it's tabulating, I think.
It is.
Yeah. So the vast majority are students, it says, right? 90,
okay.
90%. Yeah. So that's not bad. 5% students, 8%.
If the vast majority are students, I think in the next sessions, we're just going to conduct it in English because anyway, we need to analyze the essays and you need to read the essay beforehand. So I think what we have been, discussing in the first session is already pretty useful for parents to take away.
Yeah. Should we move on to that then?
Yeah. Okay. So pretty good. Thank you. So most of our attendants are students, and yeah, I'm going to share screen the essays that we have sent to you all. And in the first session, this is actually a small quiz already. I would like to ask our audience here, which version of the essay do you think is better? So these are the two exactly, these two versions actually have the exact same content, but different style. So which version do you think is the better one? Version A or version B? Can we have a poll?
We've had about.
Okay, so it seems that overwhelmingly people like version B better. There are more words, I guess.
Well, there are more images. Should we wait for more? It seems like we can call it, right?
Yeah, I think we can call it. Yeah, Mio, would you like to give some kind of analysis? This is kind of interesting that the majority of people like version B better. And why do you think that it is the case? And which one is actually the better version?
Okay, well, I can't really speak to which one is the better one if we're talking about just taste, I suppose. But I think in terms of the context of the personal statement, there are a few things that we can learn from both these two versions side by side, and also the results. So this is actually a test that we administered, I think, like every single year of our application program, and every single year we get pretty much the same results, where it's about 80% of the people saying that they prefer version B, and a small minority suggesting that perhaps version A is the better one. And I think it relates in part to just the kind of advice that sometimes people read about online, and in websites that give you tips on how to write a winning essay and things like that. And there are some typical pieces of advice that you hear all the time, such as the big one, I think, being show, don't tell, right? And when you look at version B, that version B seems to be saying, I guess, seems to be showing more, I suppose, right? Or at least not, telling, I felt sad or something like that. The reality, though, is that version A is from a published work by a professional writer. And the essay was published in, I think, the New York Times. And it's from someone who actually has quite a lot of experience writing. I believe he's an academic of some sort. The version B is just that same essay with me spending about 5 minutes adding a bunch of extra silly things. So what can we conclude from that? One possibility is that I'm actually a great writer and I should be writing novels. But I think the more reasonable conclusion is that there are some expectations with regard to what qualifies as good writing that some people might need to unlearn before they actually get started with thinking about what their personal statement will look like. So let's take a closer look at just some of the differences then. So the content itself is an example of, a significant life event, right? This is not a whole essay. This is just one scene from the essay. And you can see that in version A, the person is recounting an experience that's basically kind of like 2 atomic bombs getting dropped on him, right? So you have, first of all, the revelation that his father has AIDS, or AIDS-related complex. And the second revelation, which is that the father is gay. And these 2 things kind of get revealed to him in the space of perhaps a minute or 2 minutes or something like that. And so if you were to really try to put yourself in the headspace of someone who is actually experiencing that, they're not really going to have a lot of very sophisticated thoughts or very flowery ways of communicating what they're feeling, right? They're probably going to be in a state of shock. And version A was relatively successful. I mean, it got published, right? So it was relatively successful because it manages to convey that in a way that seems true. And when we read it, if you read the rest of the essay especially, we can understand that the author is reacting as emotively as he could, given that situation, right? During that situation, you're not actually going to start breaking down in tears or anything like that. You're going to be in a state of shock, and it will take you a while to really process everything. And so it feels true to life, I think. The version B, the thing that I messed around with, doesn't really accomplish that, because it does what a lot of students tend to do, which is try to exaggerate their emotions under the assumption that they need to say something that is really interesting to capture the audience's attention. A lot of people do this kind of thing when they try to come up with a good hook for their essay or something like that. So that hook thing is another piece of advice that gets thrown around a lot as well. But if you really read it, it doesn't seem as sincere, just because a lot of the information, a lot of the reactions are quite overblown. So just for example, let's think about the first time that the dad tells the son something. So Trey, he said, "I got sick." For the dad, that's probably all that he can probably say, because it's a very tough thing to start talking about with his son. Version B really diminishes that by adding in a bunch of information that just doesn't really help the situation, us understand the situation, right? The deathly wheeze thing already is suggesting that the person is, deathly ill, I suppose. But we're not really needing that information right now. It kind of dilutes the impact of what is actually going to come later on, which is about the AIDS-related complex, right? Similarly, with the added paragraph with what was he saying, what did this all mean, etc., right? I mean, the poor guy is just learning about something that you know, he only has a very little bit of understanding of, right? And so I don't think he's in the moment going to really thinking about, you know, not leaving the side of his father because he hasn't even heard the full story. And so I think there are a few takeaways from this. The first thing is kind of like what Russell was saying earlier on, which is that, you know, if you seem genuine and candid, and you feel like you know, you're actually transmitting something that that you truly like, then that's really what matters, right? You don't really need to have a lot of stylistic pyrotechnics to get that across. The second thing that you might want to consider is just, you know, your maturity level when you are reading something, when you are, sorry, writing about something in your life. Because, you know, I've had a lot of people who rummage around their memories for times that might be worth writing about. And some of them do tend to be quite traumatic, kind of like this one. And some of them do have the maturity to really approach it because they feel ready to address it. But others are just not ready. And I think sometimes you have to sort of think about that and not just think about, you know, oh, let me find out the, you know, most traumatic experience or the most horrific thing that happened to me and write about that, because that might catch the attention of the admissions officer. It might do the opposite. It might have the opposite effect that it was intended. And I think that the final one I'll just add was just, you know, if you do hear advice even from us about how to write an essay, so especially things like beginning with a hook or anything like that, you do need to think about them still critically, right? You can't just kind of blindly apply everything. So even if you want to show and not tell, that doesn't mean that you should just show everything. You still need to have some sense of what impression you want to have on your audience.
Great. Thanks, Mio, for the analysis. And I think we have we need to rush, and we'll move on to the second essay. The second essay that from a student from India who major in engineering, right? I think that we will probably already read through it, and then we will jump right to the discussions. Questions. Why do you think this is a good essay? Why is this a good essay? Hey, Alex, why do you think this is a good essay?
Yeah, so this is a student, and I think you're still on the first page. So if you wanted everyone to see the second one for this, I just see like the top of the essay. Oh. There we go. Yeah. Yep. So this is a student who applied to Beloit. He ended up getting a pretty high scholarship and actually just graduated and has done really, really well. So this essay stood out to me. I mean, yes, it's quite long, but it talked about, again, like what we've been saying in the whole time, like showing the inspiration and what inspired him to be interested in the type of problem solving that ended up you know, defining his academic career. So I knew he wanted to do engineering. I saw that in his application. But here he talks about where it started, you know, going back to childhood and like where he's like how he started building the confidence to think about the world in the way that he did. So, you know, what were his challenges along the way, and then why was it important to, you know, to get past that and to really take them on. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I liked it that it was like concrete examples. You know, I was sitting in the room with him. You know, he took us back to his childhood, sitting in his, you know, bedroom, like soldering together little circuits. So, you know, and this is a student who's in engineering. He's not going into writing, but he really took some time and tried to, you know, present an entire picture for us. You know, yes, I mean, there's a lot of adjectives, you know, he's kind of flourishing some of the experiences a little bit, but I don't know, it held my attention the entire time, and it helped me get to know his interest and his passion behind this. He doesn't just want to go into engineering because it's a solid career choice and it'll land a good job. Like, he actually is passionate about this type of problem solving. And I could see that in his essay.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I actually like this essay a lot because it's hard for an engineering student to write about engineering passion in this not so dry language. And also I like the fact that the essay has a very good sense of progression. So his interests progress from very simple childhood habits to more complex one, from building Legos to soldering circuits, and then to later on actually learning how to do programming. So it feels very focused. It feels that he's I can feel his passion through this is progressive like escalating details that he was giving. So does anyone else want to
since it's from India, so let me add something to it, because the students, when they write about it, so the best part of this essay is it's a beautiful way of telling your story. It's not, as you said, Lynn, that it's not dry. Okay, I mean, anybody who's reading it will get involved into it, that okay, and they would like to research about it, certain things like what exactly the circuit would be or what is this. And so it's kind of an inspiring thing to see that. And if you will see from the transition from one paragraph to another is something very smooth transition, that okay, this is building up the kind of the comprehensive. And one thing which students often ask us about the word limit for this. So you have to put a kind of a essay into a cohesiveness. Okay, so that's where I think I can see a kind of a cohesiveness into beautiful transition from one this thing, and he's been able to pinpoint his interest, that okay, why I am applying for this particular engineering. And it might vary when you join that when join in the university, when they have different experiences. But as of now, looking at the essay, it's like whatever experience he had, he has gathered into a beautiful 500 or 600 words, and that's what will always, I think, will make unique story for him. That's what, yeah. So thank you.
And as you can see, he's not talking about some fantastic big competition that he won, right, and state level. He's just talking about him as a child getting interested in this. And this one stood out of thousands of essays that we will have read that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple things to add. I like the inspiration. Again, if you've got a passion and the passion comes through, help me understand the inspiration for that passion. So I think he did a nice job of that. And I think that there's certain traits that come through. We're all interested in traits and perseverance and passion. And what else do I write here? Commitment. And these are all attractive. Right. Now, my hope and belief is what made this really special, and I'm sure it did, is the Rex corroborated. Right. The Rex kind of completed the story. Some of the other involvements that he had. I'm sure that this essay probably did a really good job connecting the rest of the application.
I'll add one thing, I suppose, which is just about the quality of the writing in general. So as someone was saying earlier, sorry, I forgot who, but it is actually quite difficult for science-oriented students to explain their interest in a way that is intelligible and interesting to someone who is not in the same field. And so I've had many math students, for example, who attempted to describe why they like math, but in their writing, it tends to be just about them doing a math problem or something, but not really helping us explain what it is. And so if they're doing something like a very high level math problem, it, for someone like me who hasn't taken calculus in about over 20 years, man, I'm old, but in so long, that loses me, right? I can't understand, I can't empathize or feel a sense of rapport with the reader. But they managed to take that comment and get more creative with just making as concrete of an explanation as possible. So maybe it's not it's no longer about, just this one student, sitting in a room and doing a math question, because that's a rather dry topic, right? Maybe he might end up using metaphors to help explain the topic so that we can actually understand what exactly he's talking about, even if we don't have the technical background. And so I think anybody has the capacity for writing creatively, especially when they realize that they need to communicate to a host of people, right? So Russell was saying that 2 people read your essays, right? At least, right? So if both of them, are math students and science students, or have that background, that's great. But if they're sociology majors like I am, then you would still need to attract our attention in some way.
Okay, so I would like to kind of sum it up a little bit for our audience to understand better, because you mentioned, traits a lot of time in your analysis, but our audience here may not be too familiar with it. So it seems that most of the AOs here, most of the admission officers, when looking at essays, will be trying to look for traits. And no matter what you write, you will have to focus on showcasing the traits you wanting to highlight, right? And as Russell has mentioned, this students seems to try to come across as someone who's very passionate, someone who's very perseverant, someone who's very, very creative, right? Yeah, so that is technically what the other student has been saying before. What is indispensable in an essay is that you have to, at the end of the day, you will have to be able to explain to your readers, to communicate with your readers what traits are you trying to highlight in essays, right? Okay, so yeah, I would like to move on to the 3rd essay. This essay is from a student from Hanoi, Vietnam. And the student certainly got into a highly competitive school. And does anyone want to jump in to kind of analyze why you like this essay, what you like most about this essay, and what traits do you find the student is trying to communicate with us?
Yeah, this was another student who applied to Beloit College, and yeah, from Vietnam. And so this is another one. I think she achieved our highest scholarship for international students. What I liked about this essay is that the student is interested in psychology. And so some of that interest in, the human experience and human nature and how she's navigating through her space comes through in the conversation, even though it's not really about psychology or about her interest in it. It's about, developing her voice as an artist too, and starting to see her city in a new way. I like that it was demonstrating kind of a level of maturity that you start seeing in high school, about one's kind of understanding about how they fit into the world as a whole. And it was another story that had me with her every step of the way. She pulled me right in with that first sentence, and I was with her until the end. This is one that, where the language, I think, is like Mio was saying, she is adding a little more like kind of flowery, expansions on her ideas along the way, but it didn't bother me in this one. So I felt like I was reading a chapter of a book.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I should probably clarify. Not everybody should be writing like the version A guy in the first essay, obviously. I think everybody does have their own style, and some people are more flowery than others. But you have to also kind of remember that there's the substance to think about as well, and you don't want your fixation with having a good style to overshadow that substance or obscure that substance. And I think this one, kind of like what Alex was saying, yeah, it's true. You can have a sense of how she sees the world. Some of the opening might be a bit flowery, but it's not overwhelming. And it seems to be serving a purpose as well. So there's nothing that seems overly gratuitous with regard to the details. And we can still follow the plot pretty easily. So yeah.
Oh, actually, I found that there are two participants raised their hand. Probably they want to ask questions directly. So can we connect them?
Yeah, one is Shubhra Tiwari, I guess. She's asking one question. So Shubhra, you can go ahead. If you're there.
Hello?
Yeah, Shubhra. You can just unmute yourself and ask, right? No, I think she's not there, Lynn. I mean, maybe we can take up later.
Yeah, we can take that up later.
Mm-hmm. There is one question from the counselor, if we can take that up quickly. Yeah, in the chat. So I'll just read it out for, I think it would be, Russell or Alex, you can reply to this one. Though I know about the Common App this thing, but I would like you to do that. So she's saying that, may I request a little more information on candidate profile versus school profile, which goes in the Common App. I'm not clear about this. Does it mean that a well-known school profile kind of makes up for a less appealing candidate profile, or vice versa? Really appreciate some more perspective on this. And this question, just to give you the background of it, because last year what we saw in India was that some of the students who were applying to the high-ranked universities and from high-ranked schools, which were international curriculum, they were rejected by the university. So what her question is that it doesn't matter that it's a school profile or a candidate profile. So if you could just touch that part, because I think this would be, and she's a counselor from Bangalore, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, so if you could answer that. So Russell and Alex, over to you.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, obviously, like the candidate profile is what the student brings, and then the school profile is the environment in which they've learned. And I'm really glad you mentioned, Chetna, that there are, numerous examples where a student was applying from a very high profile school, but that wasn't enough. So, with how we review at Beloit, I wouldn't say that the reputation of a school would, go along with like carrying that student to an admission decision. When we're reviewing a candidate's profile, we're reviewing it within the context of the school for sure, because we want to see what experiences and opportunities the student had. So how within the context of their school, how have they engaged as a student? How have they challenged themselves? If one student has access to a bunch of honors type classes and the other doesn't, I'm not going to fault the student who didn't have access to that. So we don't want to, we don't want to reward privilege, really. We want to reward a student who's showing us all of those traits that we've been discussing over the last hour. So, it's nice to see applications from fine schools. We know what to expect often from some of the finer schools because we know what they offer their students. But for us, it's an individual review of how that student fared in the environment in which they learned.
Yeah, I think that's standard operating procedure for just about all universities who take a holistic approach. I think that the thing that I'm struggling with the word, I think the area where a student kind of sometimes relies too heavily on their stat, I've got this big SAT, or, I've got this, I go to this prestigious school. I think sometimes they can kind of rely too heavily on that. And I think that's the mistake they make. But yeah, I think what Alex is describing, that's how schools should operate. And so, I think all schools that, you're working with your students and encouraging them to apply are gonna look at that the same way.
Thank you, Alex and Russell. I think, Gayatri, you got your answer from here. Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, so that is important for those people who are actually becoming the counselors, I guess, and they are helping the students. So yes, so I have some counselors joining in from India and some of the independent education consultant also. So thank you for answering that question. Over to you, Lynn. You can carry on. Yeah, there's one more student, I think. Kang Lei has raised his hand if you want to take that up before we move further.
Yes. Hello, panelists. Thank you for this seminar. I just want to ask, I've asked a lot of people on the personal statement, and I feel like I'm speaking for me and some of my friends as well, that we tend to make the essays a bit more dramatic. Like we use language that is a bit flowery. I just want to know, like, how much flowery language is enough, and how to make it so that it doesn't overshadow what we're trying to say.
So first thing I'm going to mention is there's word count, right? You know, so you have to be careful of word count. The more flowery language you use, the less opportunity you have to kind of get to the point and share the ideas that are most important. I mean, yeah, it's a balance, right? It's a fine line, you know, and having friends, having family, having whomever, consultants, you know, kind of review your essay and give you feedback, I think is important. Because, yeah, I mean, sometimes if it's too flowery, you know, I mean, it can be not as enjoyable to read. Is there an exact formula? You know, like everything, no, there's not an exact formula. I think that just getting feedback from others to kind of review your essays, and again, making sure you're getting to the point. I think that one of the most common mistakes I see is just too much narrative, too much description, and not really getting to what is the point you're trying to make? What is the takeaway that you're looking for the reader to have upon finishing your essay? So, you know, kind of keeping those thoughts in mind as you're reviewing your essay will help with that. No exact, you know, no exact formula for this. But I think Alex mentioned this about one of the essays. You know, getting a feel for what you experienced is important, right? But again, and so we have that context. But again, ultimately, the bottom line is get to the point. What's the takeaway you want us to have?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so Lynn, over to you. I think we have covered most of the questions from the chat, so we can move ahead. Unmute yourself, Lynn.
Yeah, sure. Back to our discussion. Well, I think it's pretty straightforward already. What we're trying to communicate with the audience here, that when you write what makes good essays, that they have to be to the point, as Russell said. They have to highlight certain positive traits that like such as maturity, passions, perseverance, or etc. And also pay attention to the style, to your language, the level of, you know, the balance between being flowery and being sincere. And I just want to wrap things up, because I think what we've been trying to show students is already enough to kind of explain to them what we expect from good essays, right? So that is my my summary. And does anyone want to jump in and add something before we wrap the session up? And thank you all for this very like interesting Friday night.
Yeah,
I was just going to say how impressed I was with how many people stayed till the end. You know,
Yeah.
You're really doing your homework, you're doing your part, and you know that says something about you right away. So I applaud you all for hanging in there and you know, staying engaged as well.
Yeah, I think Lynn, there is one question. I think we can take this up and then we can wrap it up. One of the attendees is asking, due to the situation with COVID-19, would the colleges be more selective than usual because of the large amount of application they receive? And this is a very common question because the pool has become larger. Those students who were deferred by a year, and then so they have a larger competitive application. So what is, I think any one of you would like to jump in and say about it?
Yeah, I mean, our admit rate changes a little bit every year depending on the size of the applicant pool. A small school like Beloit, we don't have like a growth model. We're not looking to increase the number of students. You know, we generally welcome about 300 every fall, and that's it. So, you know, we keep the numbers small on purpose. So, you know, if we have twice the amount of applications, we still have the same number of spots, you know, so that year it's, you know, our selectivity rate is going to go up, but other years, no. I mean, we're not reading differently. If anything, we're reading more holistically and reading between the lines a little bit in cases where a student was not able to do anything that they would normally have wanted to do because of lockdown. We're looking for those qualities elsewhere in the application. So we're reading differently this year, yes, but more holistically, I think.
Yeah, I think everyone realizes that why so many, you know, why the application volume went up so significantly was, you know, without SATs and ACTs, I think there were a lot more students just taking a shot, right? But what that means is, you know, in my observation is, you know, a lot of those didn't put together the great applications. You know, it was more about, hey, I've got a chance, but did they do the work, right? And I think the students who really, and this goes back to applying to the right schools for the right reasons, right? Applying to schools because you've done your homework and this is a school where you really want to be at, and your application, and we didn't go into a lot of detail about the why the school essays, but there's more value on why the school essays, you know, really connecting your story to the school story, demonstrating that you've done your homework and that you can make a clear case for that school. So, you know, I always say, don't get worried, don't get caught up in the numbers, don't get caught up in the percentages, do your homework, put together the best application you can. Okay, I think that a lot of those extra applications that made those admission rates go down, probably there wasn't a great admission rate amongst those applicants.
Okay.
You have summed it up so well, Russell. And just to add to it, and I think that would be the last words from my side for this summit from India. What matters here would be not the application number. It's just that you have to make a journey backwards, starting from what course you want to join, which university, which country you want to join, and then start looking it up that, okay, this is where, and be very focused about. And if you are not, then connecting with the universities anywhere in the world, I think, with the representatives like you, is the best way to get your answers right, rather than, I mean, if you are attending the webinar, well and good, but I think that's where you will make it up. So go ahead with that and keep writing and keep attending these kind of webinars, which will help you in a lot. So I have learned a lot, and you can see the cultural diversity which we bring here from Vietnam and India and USA. So that's where it comes from. So you have to be culturally diverse, learn, have patience, and let your traits be reflected right in your essays. So, and I hope you have been able to get it right from our side as a team from ICAC. That's where we all met. So good night from India, and thank you so much from you and Hoa for Lynn for making this happen and at this moment. So because it takes a lot of arrangements to be done. So I'm thankful from our side to all of you, each one of you, for spending so much time. Yeah.
Thank you all. This has been a very interesting discussions. And I would like to take the last few minutes to summarize and like translate it a little bit to because some people was asking me to you know, give a final summary and translation. Em xin tóm tắt lại cái phần trao đổi vừa rồi chúng ta đã có một cái workshop để phân tích ba cái thứ nhất, phần đầu tiên là phân tích hai dạng bài luận và cùng một nội dung nhưng mà cái kiểu cách viết khác nhau, và thầy Nhiêu đã có những cái phân tích khá là thú vị về những cái bài luận mà có tính mà viết hơi dài dòng và không trực tiếp. Sau đó hai bài luận tiếp theo thì chúng ta đã đều trao đổi về điều quan trọng nhất khi đọc các cái bài luận, đó là các diện tuyển sinh cố gắng tìm kiếm xem thì thí sinh đang cố gắng nói gì về bản thân. Đại diện tuyển sinh mong muốn tìm kiếm sẽ cố gắng đánh giá xem thí sinh này là người như thế nào, có những tính cách đặc biệt gì. Và chúng ta lưu ý là những tính cách đó phải là thường là những tính cách có tính tích cực, và cái cách viết phải tương đối là thống nhất với hồ sơ của em, thống nhất với trình độ tiếng Anh của em. Và cuối cùng thì có một bạn đã có, và chúng ta nên có một cái sự cân bằng nhất định giữa những cái ngôn ngữ, không nên ngôn ngữ quá bóng bẩy, nó sẽ khiến cho nội dung của chúng ta bị che mờ đi mất. Cái phần cuối cùng ấy, thì là có một bạn hỏi là năm vừa rồi có phải là vì cái số lượng thí sinh tăng cao thì cái tỷ trọng của bài luận cao hơn và mọi thứ sẽ khó khăn hơn. Tất cả đại diện của chúng ta đều nói rằng là đúng là cái số lượng thí sinh tăng cao, nhưng thực ra thì điều quan trọng nhất là chúng ta phải do your homework, có nghĩa là phải thực sự là chuẩn bị hồ sơ thật là tốt, bởi vì có rất nhiều thí sinh nhưng mà có rất là nhiều người chỉ là thử nộp hồ sơ và không chuẩn bị kỹ, thì chúng ta vẫn phải tự tin vào mình ạ. Và lần cuối cùng thì chúng ta một lần nữa là xin rất là cảm ơn mọi người đã dành thời gian vào cái buổi talk show hôm nay và ở đến tận giờ này, là một cái giờ rất là gần giờ nghỉ buổi tối rồi ạ. Xin cảm ơn tất cả mọi người, và Summit sẽ tổng hợp lại tất cả những cái video clip và phiên bản dịch để gửi tới tất cả các phụ huynh, các bạn học sinh chưa theo dõi được đầy đủ nội dung này. Và xin một lần nữa cảm ơn tất cả các diễn giả của chúng ta. We would like to thank you all our speakers to be here until this time, and have a wonderful admission season, and hopefully we'll be back, in another interesting discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye and good night from India.
Good night. Good night from Vietnam.
Yeah, take care.